Hey everybody, I'm Tommy and you are on the lifeboat. Hopefully you can hear me. Sandy, Wendy, good to see you. Jane Aldridge, what's happening? Just Joan, good to see you. Eli, what's happening? Ellie, good to see you. Kristen, Melinda, glad that you're here. I think I saw Johnny Scoville earlier. I'm not going to bury the lead. This really is a twist in the Diddy saga. And there hasn't been a lot of them. I mean, there really hasn't. Not in the hot minute anyway. But if you've been with us for any length of time in the Diddy verse, the name Derek Lee Cardello Smith may sound unusual. I mean, may sound familiar to you. Just got the 5x5. May sound familiar to you. Derek Lee Cardello Smith filed a lawsuit, right, for about $100 million against P. Diddy, and he got a judgment against him. We did a story about it a long, long time ago. This was a guy that is incarcerated, right? He's locked up. Hey, Katy Perry, the dopamine coon cat. Hello, Lisa Trimble. Good to see you. Glad that you're here. This was a guy that got a default judgment for $100 million against P. Diddy. Then P. Diddy's high dollar attorney showed up and said, "Yo, Your Honor, the papers that were sent out never got to our client. He had no clue that this was coming." Now that's an issue. That's an issue because back in August, I think it was August. I'm pretty sure it was August. On the Art of Dialogue program, Gene Deal went on, and they asked Gene Deal about the Derek Lee Cardello Smith incident. He said, and you're going to notice I'm probably going to be saying this stuff differently, but Cardello Smith said that in 1997, Diddy raped him. He said that he was a bartender at the time, and he got picked up, right? He went to a party. The party got freaky. Diddy gave him a drink, told him, according to Cardello Smith, that he laced his drink. Said, "I put a little something, something in there for you, a little kicker." I believe he said he was drinking Jim Beam, if I'm not mistaken. And Diddy brought him a drink, told him it was spiced. When he woke up in the morning, Diddy told him that he had raped him. And Diddy was naked in the process of probably assaulting somebody else. He was with a woman. I don't know what condition she was in, but he was with a woman, and he said, "Yeah, I did this to you earlier." Now, Cardello Smith wanted to, allegedly, this is the story, right? Here we go. Look, check it out, check it out, check it out. Allegedly. Now, Cardello Smith is a guy that is easy to say, I don't want to believe anything about this dude. Do you know why? Because there's a bunch of stories out there about this guy that make him sound like he might be the worst person on planet Earth. He's got an ugly criminal jacket, man. Every single thing that this guy's been busted for is ugly. It's kidnapping, it's SA, it's raping people, it's all bad, sexual assaults, kidnappings, everything on his jacket's disgusting. Hey, Sammy Sue, good to have you here. Lisa Miller, glad you're here. Big time. Glad you're here. So it's easy to throw it out and go, the guy's a scumbag. He's going to be doing the rest of his life in prison. He's exactly where he deserves to be. Okay. All right. I get you. I think everybody feels that way, right? But then he files this new suit. And this one, folks, this is one of those, right? Completely blow your hat off and maybe the top of your skull. Because Cardello Smith's new lawsuit says this: I got set up. When I called the cops and told them that Diddy raped me, the cops swept everything under the rug. Now, Cardello Smith allegedly has sworn affidavits from the cops that did it. Said they got $100K for doing it. Witnesses against him who swore sexual assault charges or rape charges or kidnapping charges, who are saying they got paid $10,000 a whack. Cardello Smith's got this nice little package put together that if you go and read, it's got prosecutors' names in it. Right? The cops themselves have come forward to say they were involved. This is weird, right? This is weird. I'm the first dude to say you can't believe half the stuff that comes out. But what do you do when the Detroit Police Department is going, yeah, maybe we had a little something to do with getting old Derek Lee Cardello Smith put away for something he didn't do. God almighty, can you imagine sitting in prison for those crimes and not having committed those crimes? Now, I'm not saying that that's what happened. But I'm saying this guy's got a lawsuit filed that's going to freak you the hell out, man. I promise you. You read through this lawsuit, this is going to freak you out. We're talking about a level of corruption that is, so this has got less to do with Cardello Smith getting raped. And it's got a lot more to do with the cover-up afterwards. Now, do you know what happens when something like this breaks and there's a prosecutor that knew about something like this? How many people do you think the prosecutor might have prosecuted over the course of their lifetime? How many people do you think that they put in prison? Now you've got to start wondering to yourself, on every one of these deals, was there a little something? Did you get $2,000 to make this one go away? Did you get $5,000 to make this one stay out? Now every single thing that happens through that police department, if this pans out, this is absolutely massive. You remember back when everybody was the pundits were yelling, oh, they're going to let him out on bail. And I said, there ain't no way in hell they're letting this fool out on bail. This is why. This is why. Diddy already told people he fixed the case in New York, right? Where Shine Barrow went away for a decade for a crime that Diddy was at least involved in, right? They both discharged their weapon. Now, Natanya Rubin, the dopest nerd online, got a great channel, but she says she saw the shooter that put the bullet in her face and that it was Diddy. She had no doubt. She's always kept that story from the start. But Diddy said he paid for it, right? Those are his words, allegedly, that he paid for it. Johnny Cochran was there. They bought a juror, right? This is a dude that believes if you can get out of his way, he can fix anything. Now, here's where it gets crazy. Gene Deal said in that interview in August on the Art of the Dialogue program, Gene Deal said, and you know why this sticks in my mind? Because when Gene Deal told the story about this, a lot of times, I mean, you watch a million hours of Diddy stuff and you forget things. But Gene Deal laughed at this. And he laughed because he can't, in his mind, I like Gene Deal. I don't think he's a bad person. And I don't think he's laughing at a man being raped. I think he was the concept that a man this large, Cardello Smith's a big dude. And I sometimes people laugh at it because they're nervous or whatever, but it stuck out in my head because I was not happy with him. It really stuck out in my head as one of those interviews. But he was talking about Cardello Smith, and he said, and then they took a trip to the prison to go see him, to offer him a settlement. Now, if they didn't rape this dude, why did they go to the prison to offer him a settlement? And when Cardello Smith filed the $100 million lawsuit, and they came back and said, Diddy doesn't even know that this thing exists, Cardello Smith's response to the court was, why don't you check the visiting logs? Because for a guy that didn't know he was getting sued, he sure as hell came out here and offered me $2.3 million. Gene Deal backs that story up. Gene Deal backs up the story that they went out, right, to Michigan to go see Derek Lee Cardello Smith in prison to offer him money to make this go away. Now, if that's the truth, right, and I don't know, let's just pretend for a sec that is the truth, that he showed up there. That means that you're going to see a man you put in prison for something that he didn't do, to offer him $2.3 million to keep his mouth shut and not sue you. I don't think that's a hell of an offer. Maybe it was 23. Gene Deal that day seemed confused whether it was 2.3 or 23, and I can't really chase it down to any other source other than the Gene Deal interview. So let's even say it's 23. Man, you put me in prison for a 26 or a 27-year sentence, there's no amount of money on planet Earth going to shut me up, I promise. And I think Cardello Smith has been acting that way. This is a guy's filing one lawsuit after another. And by the way, he's good at it, right? Like all BS to the left, this is a dude that showed up in prison and said, I'm going to learn how to write a really good 2235 motion. I'm going to learn how to sue people. I'm going to become a damn good paralegal. And Cardello Smith's got the hang of it. This is not an amateur paper pusher. This guy's pretty decent. But this is bizarre. This is bizarre. You know what an affidavit is, right? You're saying, this is my word. This is my bond. This happened. Now, I swear on an affidavit, I'll get laughed out of court. And I'm not being funny, by the way. Once you've been to prison, you're worthless on a stand. You're a liar for the rest of eternity, right? Especially if you're, whatever your crimes are. If you deceived people, you're really screwed. If you're a con man, there's no coming back from that. But more importantly, if you've ever been addicted to heroin, it is basically considered by the courts that you cannot take the word of a heroin addict for anything. And I think it's probably, it probably doesn't sound particularly respectful, but certainly while they're on it, you can't. But Cardello Smith, if he has sworn affidavits from people who wear badges, right? That's going to really be a very, very different thing. And they're listing, these aren't hypothetical names. These are names of people that said, yeah, I was a cop. I got $100K to make this guy go away. God almighty. The corruption case. Forget the, and no, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but forget all of the sexual assault and the rape stuff for a second. Just the corruption end of this. You bought 25 years of a man's life. You should get the death sentence for that. If Cardello Smith is telling the truth on this, they need to stick a needle in Diddy's arm. I'm serious. It's cancer. That's the most effed up thing I've ever heard in my life. But, I mean, look, logic, right? Smell test, all of these things. Okay, here's your first question. If we're doing this from the logical standpoint, the first question is, why wasn't this the first lawsuit? Now, right? Because Cardello Smith's been taking a lot of shots at Diddy. He actually had a 90-day injunction at one point against Diddy to stop him from selling any of his properties because Cardello Smith wanted the money from him. And he thought that Diddy was trying to transfer things into, and the court actually gave him an injunction. They were taking him seriously. But this is huge. By the way, you go away for a little while, man. I saw a couple of different content creators that one I don't know, I kind of put a little stock and trade in. I don't talk about content creators, as you know, but I saw one that was talking about how all of the lawsuits against Diddy are out because of what happened with the attorney thing. Let me explain something, folks. What happened with Busby? This happens a lot. Now, what Busby did was stupid. You're supposed to file the paperwork to make sure that you can come in and practice law in a district that you didn't pass the bar in or that you're not licensed in. And it's usually just kind of a courtesy that the court sort of almost pro forma, like across the board, just says, yeah, go ahead, come on in and practice law. But you got to file the paperwork, right? He didn't. That doesn't mean that all of those cases get booted. It means that the law firm that he was working in conjunction with, because if he didn't have a license in New York, then he wasn't filing any of those papers. If he didn't have a waiver to practice in front of that judge, then they weren't filing any of those. He was doing that through whatever lawyer is licensed and does have a standing in the court. Nothing changed that. The only thing that's changing is because of all of the hubbub that happened with the Jay-Z situation. All right? We're not calling him Voldemort anymore. Go ahead and demonetize it. The Jay-Z situation and all of the hubbub around that, the court's just like, nah, get the hell out of here, man. You should have filed this paperwork before. No, we're not hearing you in here. And probably because they're sick and tired of how many freaking pieces of paper have they already seen because of this case, right? You got the Jay-Z team filing one thing after another to the point where the judge has to yell about it. Of course he wants Busby gone, right? Get that. No, maybe next time. File your paperwork a little earlier. Let this be a lesson to you, counselor. That kind of thing. But those cases ain't going anywhere. None of those things were dismissed. God almighty, if you just start clicking on things, right? Some of the thumbnails I saw today. I haven't been online for a hot minute. I really haven't. But this Cardello Smith thing, I promise you, this could be the most interesting thing that has happened so far, civilly. You also probably heard that we have heard for the first time from Christina Karam. You want to tell me how that woman has managed to stay out of sight, under the radar, without a picture being taken of her or anything else since they raided his house? That's damned impressive. It really is. That's damned impressive. But she came out with a statement. You know what the statement sounded like? I don't know. You could take my opinions and a grain of salt or whatever. But it sounded to me like, hey, we're going to have to deal with these civil things. But I have a feeling she's probably working with the government on the other side of it. And we're going to be finding out pretty soon on all this. They can't keep the names locked up for much longer. And that's per the court. The court is taking extra diligence. Now does everybody understand why? Right? Let's just say that this Cardello Smith thing is real. Well, good God, can you imagine letting Diddy out of court with $400 million? He offered a cop $100,000 to set somebody up and get him tossed into, allegedly. This is the Cardello Smith lawsuit, right? So the people who play in the devil's advocate, how come that lawsuit didn't come first? How come he just sued for the rape thing? Well, here's my answer to that if we're playing the logic game. The logic game is, if I accuse you of rape, it's my word against yours, and I don't need to get all of the other people that need to tell the truth in order for that to become something, right? You can accuse somebody of something, anything, and it's you against them. But if you say, I got set up, right? All of the women that accused me of this, they all got paid. Okay, well, that's a little different. You know, everybody says that, right? I've spent some time in prison. You'd be shocked how many people, when you say, what are you in prison for? They go, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Like most guys are just going to take that one to the grave, I guess. Yeah. A lot of people just still swear on a stack of Bibles they didn't do it. We're in a really, really odd situation with this case. I think they're terrified to let the names out. I think that this little power group is a lot bigger than we think it is. I think it's a lot more powerful than we think it is. And I think that Subramanian, pardon me, the judge in this has a friggin' handle on what a pressure cooker he's sitting on. I mean, for real, for being a judge, he's Wile E. Coyote on one of those Acme firework things. This thing is going to be a nightmare. Can you imagine? You know what the press is going to be like? They had that hearing the other day, and it was one of the first ones where it was really scheduled, and we knew there was going to be a big block of time, and they were actually going to be discussing some things. And there were fools running in and out of the courtroom to tweet every 45 seconds. This is going to be a circus. Right? This is going to be crazy. And I think, and I'll tell you something. So far, say what you will. Have I been way off, people? Honest to God. Where was I way off on any of it? How much crap are we hearing about all of the deal making and all of the stuff that went on behind the scenes between Jay-Z and Busby? Right? All of the chess pieces getting moved. And we're going to do this 10 days after this. And boy, when I said they're cutting deals, everybody went, you're an idiot. If they were cutting deals, why would they be doing this? Why would be? Man, you don't walk away from lawsuits unless you think you're getting paid. That girl said, I'll take a polygraph. You ain't walking away from that. Right? A rape victim that says, give me a polygraph test. I want to take a polygraph. And you're going to say, with prejudice, we're going to get rid of this. No, there was a deal made. Now, maybe they got left holding the bag because that's kind of how it looks like it happened. But trust and believe they were wheeling and dealing. That wasn't a scared Busby running for the border like everybody said it was. Sorry. I promise you that's not how that one went down. And when Jay-Z came out to gloat about it and say, yeah, we kind of promised them a deal, but we didn't come through on it. Why would you have promised them a deal? Why were you even at the negotiating table, mister? I'm not going to give them a red cent. Remember him? You're not going to get a dime out of me. I've seen you type 1,000 times with your cheap suit and your 800 number. Well, we ain't running. You ain't getting one penny out of me. Oh, and those guys that went down with badges, they're off duty or whatever they are. Those were just guys that did that on their own, right? Where are my friends doing crap like that for me on my own? I'll tell you what. My friends do different things on their own. None of those things. But, right? Yeah. Curus, LLC and NYC filing for Busby, says Lisa Ayers. You mean they're not just going to drop all of the suits? I'll be honest, I was bummed out. I was watching a content creator I've been following for a hot minute. And the doomsday predictions from this cat. It's all over. Everybody lost the lawsuits. They're all getting tossed out because of what happened. And I'm watching this thing going, I mean, damn, if we're paying bills or whatever, you know what I mean? If you got to clickbait a couple in there, but you can't possibly believe that. Folks, I'm going to tell you something. You may not believe this, but courts do have a little bit of discretion. When we were discussing the girl that alleged that she was raped by Diddy and by Jay-Z with Celebrity B, whoever the girl was that was alleged in the room. When we were talking about that case, they were saying, well, it was a 20-minute ride. It might have been a 30-minute ride. And they started talking about, what do you call it? Like how you draw out townships and whether or not this was going to fall within certain jurisdictions. And I heard a judge that was being interviewed about the thing, and they said, you know, as a judge, you don't want to be the person to say, that girl got raped 9 feet on the other side of that, you know, fake imaginary line right there, so we're not going to be able to handle this case. judges have the authority and the ability in most cases to go, you know what? We're going to protect the integrity of the case and of the law. So she's 800 yards or she's 2 miles or whatever outside of this. We're not going to let that be what keeps this person from getting justice on a rape case. You know, we always think of the horror stories where people, but for the most part, there is a little bit of logic. I agree with you. The Diddy situation is going to be going on until the trial starts. I agree with you. Let me mute this thing while I blow the air horn. It's always scary too when you got a mustache and a goatee that you're not coming back with, like, you know, looking like the crying kid from A Christmas Story. Yeah, this is it's going to be going on right until the end. So Subramanian is doing everything he can to keep the world from knowing the names on these lists because of things like the Derek Lee Cardello Smith case. Now, let's just say hypothetically that Derek Lee Cardello Smith is not lying and that he's doing more than 25 years in prison for a rape he didn't do, for a kidnapping he didn't do, for a sexual assault he didn't do, and that all of this was just hundreds of thousands of dollars paid to the right people by Sean Combs. That's what is alleged. I'm not saying that that's what happened. That's what Derek Lee Cardello Smith said happened. He's also found a bunch of people who said, yeah, we participated in it and got paid for it. And here's an affidavit. If it was just this dude popping off at the mouth, we probably wouldn't be spending a lot of time talking about this. But when there are witnesses that are coming together and saying, yeah, I did this. If you're Subramanian right now, you got to be terrified. Right? Yeah, the law dictates that Diddy and everybody else has a right to know who the accusers are and who all of these people are. But this might be real. You might have a guy out here that's not afraid to try to buy off your prosecutor. Right? Or your judge. What can a couple of $100 million buy in justice? I'm telling you, this guy is sitting on a bomb. There's another word you can't use without getting demonetized. Right? This dude's sitting on a bomb, a big one. Because this case is going to be a dumpster fire and a fecal matter cinema like nothing you've ever seen. For real. I think that the lawyer that walked, remember, last week we had the RICO attorney. The guy's name's RICO. That's just an odd name for the, but he walked away. I think he walked away because he knows that Diddy doesn't have a chance. I think that they played their hand. This is Tommy's opinion. Everybody hear this? This is an opinion. This is an opinion. But my opinion is this. When they realized how much information there was. Now, keep in mind that allegedly Diddy talked to his attorney about Christmas, right? A lot of Christmases ago. Not last one, but the one before. So right after Cassie dropped the bomb in November, he already started talking to attorneys and all of that. And he probably painted a picture of how much stuff is, like we record every room and those things are on hard drives. And he had to have had some kind of an idea of the scope of how long this had been going on or whatever. And they made a plan. And this is done a lot in law, right? You say, I think we're better off if we take our constitutional right? Our constitutional right to say, I want a speedy trial. Now, in a state case, there are some states you're guaranteed to be in trial within 90 days. Right? Now, that's a chess move. You're forcing the prosecution, who probably has, 150 cases on the docket? Right? Or more? You're forcing a lot of manpower and stuff to be focused on one case because you have to now go full bore on this. And it's a gamble that defense lawyers and their clients have to play. And I think they blew it. What do they got, 60 days? Maybe 90 days to put this together? Now, I promise you, the day is coming where Sean Puffy Combs is going to have a different attorney. And that attorney is going to be filing an appeal. And the appeal is going to be based on ineffective counsel, right? You watch. He's going to say that his lawyer blew this case by forcing them to go to trial early. He's going to say that he didn't want to do that, and that this is going to be his play. Because I want to tell you something. Once you're done, right, you need to start working instantly. He probably already has appellate lawyers on staff looking for issues, but this is going to be a big one for them, I think. How can you possibly go through the mountain of discovery that is going to be dropped on them? Terabytes of information. Hundreds of people on a witness list that we know for a fact we're going to see, 23 or something like that. There's not going to be a big number out of the hundreds that are on the list. There's a lot of crap that these people have to go through. And I don't think you could have pulled it off in 6 months with a full team. I mean, granted, they've been working on the case for a year, but they didn't get the prosecution's case in chief to look at, right? They've got a couple of months to put together a defense. I think they screwed the pooch on this. I really do. I think it was a bad gamble. Put a 2 in the chat if you agree. Put a 3 in the chat if you think this was a decent idea on their part. I understand. You got to understand where they're coming from, right? We don't want to give the prosecution too much time to find more witnesses. Because in theory, if this is true, there could be hundreds of witnesses we haven't heard from. There are stories that could be even scarier. Do I think his sons will have to testify? I don't think his sons are going to have to testify necessarily in this trial, although I say sons as in across the board. I think there will be at least one that will be testifying in this trial or getting charged. When Little Rod filed his lawsuit a long time ago, we put up like a depth chart. We put up a list of the players, and it had on the top row, it had Sean Combs, it had Christina Karam, it had Ethiopia Hoptamariam, right, from Motown, and it had Sir Lucian Grange. The next row below were wranglers. These were guys that were actually out finding victims for Diddy to rape and sexually assault, right? That's basically what these people's job was. Then he had people whose jobs it was to go out and get the date rape drugs and the chemicals that he was going to use to knock these people out, right? One of those, we presumably met Brendan, when they caught the dude getting on an airplane with some pink cocaine, which, by the way, doesn't have a whole lot of cocaine in it. It's more of like an ecstasy, sniffable ecstasy product, really. It's kind of more like X. It's a methyl base. People party with it. It's a party drug. It's a club drug. It's not cocaine. However, it seems to be something that Diddy was really fond of. Tucci, they sometimes call it, because of its chemical makeup is like 2C, whatever, so they call it Tucci. Wouldn't the Wranglers be guilty? You betcha. The really funny thing about this, the B Lady A. Pieri, is this. The concept behind, hey, Squirrel Nut Zipper. Good to see you. How you been? Just wanting to say hi to everybody. She's kind of a rock star, She gets a little grumpy with the small cat around. Everybody involved would be guilty, right? This is a racketeering, influence, corrupt, criminal organization, right? So this is running the rackets. What were the rackets? The rackets were dealing dope, gambling, prostitution, right? These were all the rackets. This is the stuff that was run by the mob. Well, there are people that will say this is the new mob. They're certainly moving a lot of drugs, weren't they? Notice I didn't say allegedly. Well, alcohol's a drug, right? And they're all moving a crap load of that, aren't they? They all got their own brands. Every single one of them, right? Curtis, he's got his. Right? 50 Cent's got his stuff. Everybody's got it. Ryan Reynolds, he's got some poison. Why not? He's selling drugs legally. Well, they're accused of selling some other kinds of drugs as well, right? And there are a lot of people out there that are saying this is the new mob. So would the Wranglers be guilty? Absolutely. That's why they were on that chart. Everybody on that chart, as it is laid out by Little Rod, they're all guilty. These are the people that are involved. Now, there's going to be a lot of people involved whose names we don't think about, like the cleanup crew, like the guy that so boldly went over to Rolling Stone magazine and did an interview. We talked about that back before the music died. Right? We were talking about that Rolling Stone magazine and that article that was written by this cat who says, I went in there and had to clean up, semen and feces and blood. And yeah, it just sounds like a hell of a time, right? But that he had to go in and clean this up and drugs everywhere and broken stuff. And then they had to go downstairs and work out the deals with I don't know if you know this, but you're confessing to cleaning up a crime scene, right? in a magazine that's got what, 3 or 4 million people in their subscription base. I'm talking about the ones mailing home, not the ones reading about it online. A lot of people get real bold talking about the stuff they did in the past, right? I went to prison, right? I'll talk about the stuff I did in my past. But man, if you haven't been busted for them, maybe you shouldn't be talking about it. The people that went in and cleaned up those hotel rooms, the people that made the hotel sexy before he got there. Remember that interview, Conan O'Brien? Conan said, I understand you just can't check into a hotel like normal people can. And he said, no, there's a crew that gets there before I get there and they got to make it sexy. That was the term that he used. Lighting candles, certain scents, smells, sniffs that he wanted in there. I guess to cover up the stench of baby oil and gamma hydroxybutyric acid. And then have the heavy equipment moved in. You're carrying in the Bang-O-Meter 2000 or whatever that thing is called. You're carrying in 2 of those. You're part of this. You're setting up for a crime to take place. You booked the venue. You're involved. Right? You've heard the term snuff film. You're not allowed to say that one on YouTube either, right? But if one of those is filmed, the guy that bought the camera, if he knew what the camera was going to get used for, can be charged everybody, right? And RICO lets you go like this in a way that no other crime will. For instance, there's a statute of limitations, right? The statute of limitations runs on a crime. Let's say it's theft. You got 7 years to bust a person for stealing. If you don't bust that person within 7 years, you're not gonna, right? You can't prosecute them after that. That means at year 10, they can come out and go, wow, boy, did I take you on that casino. Let me tell you what I did. With RICO, they can move the statutes of limitations, right? If they put a superseding indictment in and the superseding indictment was from 1992, they could start backing up from 1992, right? They could start doing some things. As a former criminal, RICO was always, to us, this is how the government cheated so that they could get people that they didn't get the first time. And you can look at this any way you want. It's lovely what they're going to be able to do. Taking apart a criminal operation like this. Very cool concept. You could also just charge everybody one at a time with the same crime, right? But this gives them so much more power. And here's what happened, honestly. What happened is John Gotti, who was one of the heads of one of the 5 crime families in New York, kept getting taken to court and he kept beating it. One right after the other, right? The Teflon Don, they called him. Because nothing would stick to him, you see. So they took him to trial on a murder case, right? And he had a great attorney, and they went in and they put on the perfect defense. And the second they were done with that, and they won, the next day they can charge him with RICO. They know what his defense is, right? They know exactly what he's going to put on for a defense before they even get started. And now they're just going to take him back in for what we call double jeopardy, meaning in the United States of America, you can't be charged twice for the same crime, which is why O.J. Simpson, who was found not guilty, the whole world kind of assumed he killed Nicole Brown and her friend, right? Ron Goldman. But you couldn't charge him a second time. Even if evidence came out, even if somebody said, hey, I found a videotape, check this out. This is O.J. planting the knife in the middle of his wife's throat. I have it on video. Does nothing. Once you've been charged, you can't be charged again. Unless they decide to make it a RICO case. And then they can charge you for that same crime all over again. I don't know how cool that is. Honestly, I don't. I don't know how cool that is. But this is where we're at. And they're going to use this to take Diddy out. And I'll tell you something. Iggy Azalea came out today. You know who that is? I didn't. I had to look her up. Must have become popular while I was incarcerated. But this Iggy Azalea lady has come out and started talking about some things that Kanye West had said to her while the two of them were hanging out one time. Had to do with her boyfriend's junk. Size, length, shape, etc. Wanted to know an awful lot about it. Creeped her out. Led her to believe that maybe Kanye, his door was swinging both ways. Right? I think it's really weird that she's coming out right now. Right? She hasn't really been a part of the Diddy conversation, or I would have heard of her, right? I haven't heard of Iggy Azalea speak up, and I'm being facetious. I had heard the woman's name, I'd seen it in magazines or whatever, but I didn't know what her claim to fame was. I didn't know how she became known or anything like that. In prison, you get, us and people, and you kind of flip through and go, who the hell are these people? And that's kind of half of your prison sentence. But I didn't know who she was. But Kanye West is in a whole shitstorm right now, right? With the Kardashians, and he said some really jacked up things about the children of Jay-Z and Beyonce. He made a reference to them being retarded or being disabled. It's bad form, and he did it on Twitter, on X. And then, of course, he took it down the next day. But he took it down and said, I didn't take it down because I don't believe in it. I took it down because I didn't want this to get me canceled off of X. But I believe what I said. This guy's a dump truck, right? He wears a diamond swastika around his neck. He's a dump truck. He is a guy that will say anything and do anything to offend because he has found a way to remain relevant in a market that he's irrelevant in. Sadly, sorry, it's the truth. Like, he's not really part of the clique. He's been kicked out of the weirdo Kardashian clan or coven or whatever the hell you call those people, right? And he kind of floats in this weird universe where we sit and wait for him to have a Kanye explosion, don't we? Right? Have you ever noticed they always coincide with his albums being released? You know, I heard the theory of he's bipolar. Well, his mania seems to only come when he's getting ready to release an album, right? Or a music video, or he's doing something like that. All of the things that he's doing, having his kids on an album with Diddy's kids, all of these things are just to keep us talking about him. The Nazi stuff, all of it. But I'll tell you what, say what you will. I do believe this is the new gangsters. I do believe that the hip hop crews and all these are gangsters, right? You got what, 7 AR-15s in your house? Some with obliterated serial numbers and some with 50 round barrel magazines? You're a gangster. You call yourself whatever you want. You're a gangster. And we heard from Cassie Ventura that she was standing there one time, right, while he was arming people. It looked like something from James Bond movies, handing one gun after another to people, right? Because they were running out in the street to go handle stuff. We heard Gene Deal tell stories where he called up and said, we need the whole crew, man. If we go without the crew tonight, someone's going to die. Does this sound normal to you? Right? For real. You think Bruce Willis went through that? He's an actor. You think Bruce was calling his people? He was famous. You think Brad Pitt was calling up his security and saying, hey, man, we're going to need some extra people. Or someone's going to die tonight. This was a conversation that took place routinely among these people and their security staff. This isn't musicians. These are gangsters. Sorry, not sorry. Yeah, they might be putting out some music. Shocker, right? If you create an industry where people sing about breaking up kilos of cocaine into rock and selling it, or turning tricks, pimping women, how could anything possibly go wrong? Like, it's amazing that somehow this industry got out of control. A friggin' shock, isn't it? Who could have seen that coming? But I think it's really odd. He farted around with Beyonce and Jay-Z and their kids. And they put out a statement that said something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing, but something along the lines of, we're going to make a decision how we're going to proceed with this, whether it's going to be legal or otherwise. And they don't mean, I'm going to bump you off, or what they mean is, are we going to maybe make a statement or come out and make an album or, do something, maybe a GoFundMe, something. Or are we going to call an attorney and try to sue you back to the Stone Age? Now, you could say to yourself, well, what if his kids do have some kind of a disability? Would the truth be your defense? Because from defamation, your defense is always, well, what I'm saying is the truth, right? That's one. You can sue even if what the person is saying is the truth. If the only reason they released it was to inflict emotional harm or stress. Did you know that? True story. Let's say you know that your someone's son unalived themselves, right? You can release that, and the fact that it is the truth should be enough to protect you. But if they have a video of you saying to somebody, I'm going to splash a picture of this guy's corpse on the front page of the New York Times, and we'll see how the family likes that one. Now, you didn't The fact that it's the truth doesn't protect you anymore, because what you're doing with a malicious intent to cause emotional harm or distress intentionally. And it's possible that they could go that route. However, normally Beyonce's mom will pop up and say something. This time Beyonce's dad popped up and said something. And he said, I don't know exactly how to paraphrase it. You know how I would say it though? I would say, he said something along the lines of, good luck getting somebody to work with you in the music industry ever again, fool. That's kind of what he said. He said, you're acting like a fool. And you know what? The music industry's got a long memory. I think this guy's going to... Jay-Z and Beyonce, say what you will, man. Right? They have more Grammys than everybody on planet Earth combined, whatever. They are the king and queen, right? Before my shows, I usually thank Beyonce at a general principle. Everybody seems to, right? This is the most powerful couple in music. There's no mistaking that, right? And maybe an entertainment period. For $4 billion, right? He's got the Super Bowl on lock, right? This is a guy that's got a whole lot of sway. And he's rich as hell. And you know what? They could squeeze Kanye West to the point where there's nobody on planet Earth that's going to talk to the fool, at least within the music industry. Good luck recording with Diddy. The music rooms and the feds are pretty weak, I'll be honest with you. But, yeah, it's the whole thing. We're getting so close to where this is going to be interesting, right? Really. And I know this is the calm before the storm. It's the boring before the storm. Who's kidding who? We want the list of names. You want a warning? When you see the people that are being charged alongside Diddy, it's going to bum you out. Because there might be 25 or 30 names. I'm taking a shot in the dark. Saying, let's say there's a couple of dozen names. I bet we're not going to know more than 4 of them. This is a big corporation. There's a lot of people working for Sean John and for his security team. And hey, if I was a bodyguard of his, I'd be terrified. I would be terrified. Wouldn't you? Seriously. How many of the stories have we heard have his bodyguards were standing there? I got news for you. You watch somebody get raped and you stand there, you're in trouble. Right? You're in trouble. It's not something that you can just sit and be a witness to on a regular basis and then say, hey, I was following orders, right? For you history buffs, that didn't work at Nuremberg, and it's probably not going to work in the Southern District of New York when attempted by Sean Combs's staff. Following orders, if those orders are felonious, you don't get a break on that. I promise you. You can't just go, oh yeah, see, this is my boss. I thought he'd kick my ass if I didn't do it, so I did it. Well, good luck with that. You might be able to sell that to a jury, and I'm not being funny. Like the fear of him, look, when this guy's done being absolutely raked across the coals, right, in this trial, the world is going to realize that what a dangerous dude this guy was. And maybe there'll be some people that can say, you know what, Your Honor, straight up, I feared for my life. Number one, I was afraid to quit. I thought if I quit, I got so much information on the guy. Now, we don't know what's true anymore. We really don't. The pneumonia stories, man, we heard a lot of them. Are they true? Who the hell knows? Honestly. I mean, we know that we know Kim Porter, what she died of, right? We know a couple of other people that we know had the pneumonia or whatever. But boy, the numbers keep getting bigger. Like, I listen to shows where someone will say, there's 17 people that died of it. I don't know the numbers, man. I don't think any of us do. That's a great question. What, and I don't know why this isn't working. Let's see if we can do this, because I like Kiki's question here. Let's try Kiki's question. Diddy's trial starts in May, Cinco de Mayo. If we're lucky, I think they're bumping it to the 12th, though. In your opinion, what are the different scenarios that could happen? All right, so here are the different scenarios that could play out. Number one, as we get really, really close, and I mean really close, like the first week in May, there's probably going to be that one last discussion between the prosecution and the defense that says something along the lines of, I'm going to tell you something, Mark, right, Agnifilo, you're going to lose this case. Ain't no way you win this one. So, how about we save the government a hell of a lot of money? We save Cassie Ventura and all of the other victims having to go through and relive this on the stand and go through all of this friggin' circus. and we put a deal on the table that gets your guy out before he dies. I don't think that Sean Combs has the ego to plead guilty to anything. I think he'd rather die. Truly. But one of the scenarios is on the 23rd hour, he cuts a deal. And that deal would require elocution, which means he'd have to probably turn in a bunch of people. He'd have to run his mouth off. He'd have to tell them everything that they did that was illegal and who all was involved and everything else. And you got a better chance of seeing our Lord and Savior in sunglasses driving a Harley. I just don't think it's going to happen, people. So the other options are he can go to court and we can get a hung jury. It only takes, it doesn't take a lot to get a hung jury. That could happen. Or we're going to get a conviction or a not guilty. The odds of this guy coming up not guilty, I don't know, right? It's so confusing. And I'll tell you why. Because I've probably looked through a terabyte of information on Diddy. And I have no idea what I have seen and how it compares to what the jury is going to see, right? I have no idea. To the extent that we know they have freak-off tapes. There's 8 of them. They want us to believe that it very much looks like a consensual threesome with maybe some really high-tech sex toys involved. And that it may lean a little bit to the extreme, but that this is their lifestyle. It's not your lifestyle, but that don't kink shame us. This is what we're into. We like to bring in, professional sex workers to have sex with my girl while I watch. And when they get tired, there's a machine that does it. I kind of like to see her get banged for 2 days straight. Now, that doesn't make sense to most of the people on planet Earth, but in our little circle, that's how we express love. That's going to be the line of crap from the prosecution. From the defense. That's the only thing they got. The only defense they have is that this is consensual. That's it. Now, the prosecution has a tape of Cassie Ventura getting the crap kicked out of her in a hotel that used to be called the Intercontinental. I guess it's changed its name since then. Allegedly, that's her trying to leave one of these freak-offs that she didn't want to participate in. In her testimony in her lawsuit, she said that she would know these things were coming in for days ahead of time. She would start to get sick. Her friends said the same thing. You could see her start to... Well, imagine knowing you had to schedule your own rape. And there are going to be people, I'll get a bunch of hate, I'll get emails and be like, man, she looks like she's into it in the videos. What is your option? Right? There are things that we do know. We don't even really have to say allegedly, like the dinner that 9 people were at where he punched her as hard as he could in the stomach. There's some guys watching tonight. You've been hit in the stomach before, right? One of those really hard shots. You imagine punching a woman in the stomach as hard as you could with a do to her? This is a girl that was afraid of him with good freaking reason. He knew that Kim Porter's face had to be fixed on multiple occasions, and we know that Cassie ended up in a couple of emergency rooms too. Allegedly, this is a person that had to be afraid for her life. Had to be. He made a point of telling her to carry his piece, right? We heard that. And we know that he made J-Lo do that too. Now, is that a power play? I think it's a coward play. They've wrapped this that he puts the gun in the bag because he wants her to know he's got a gun. He puts the gun in the bag because he doesn't want to get caught with a gun. Don't kid yourself. The girl that's traveling with P. Diddy, what do you think the odds they're searching her purse? Right? Honestly, you're going into a nightclub, well, nowadays it might be a little different, but back then, right? You're P. Diddy's girl. I don't think they're going through your purse. I think you're probably getting waved to a VIP section that doesn't have to deal with paying the cover charge. Right? While you go get your bottle service. Does anyone think the jury will have a copy of Kim's book? No. So they're going to really try hard to make sure that when they're going to do a really good job to try to make sure that nobody is that familiar with this case. One of the questions most assuredly would be, are you familiar that Kim Porter had a book? Do you know any excerpts from it? Like, these are questions that they want to, in theory, impanel a jury that knows so little about this case. What you're looking for are people who go, Diddy, is he an athlete? Right? And you may think that's insane, but when I was doing this full time and people would say, hey, what are you doing? And I'd say, I got a YouTube channel. What are you talking about? Well, right now we're talking a lot about P. Diddy. You'd be shocked how many times people would say to me, He's an athlete, right? He's a guy in trouble for rape or whatever, but they don't know who he is. They're not following this the way we are. So why did she agree to all of this stuff? Well, that's a great question. And here's the answer, I think, right? I don't know is the answer. But let me throw out a couple of possibilities maybe, right? You dream of being something, right? And then you meet somebody and that person says, I can make that dream come true. And the next thing you know, you're signing a contract deal, right? And he's putting you up in this unbelievable apartment. And this guy is famous for love bombing people, showering people, right? I mean, showering people with gifts. So she's got, 5, 6, carat stones coming. Famously, he pulled a ring off and said to the driver the night of the Pew Pew incident, take this ring to hold on to for collateral. It's worth 350 grand. So this guy starts showering you with all these gifts and it just seems perfect. Nobody beats the piss out of his girlfriend the first time they go out, right? An abuser doesn't do that. It's a process, right? Nor does someone scream at someone when they first start hanging out with them. These things are processes that take time and they grate on each other and whatever. But with Diddy, there's a pathology. It's not just two people fighting. It's not, he leaves the toilet seat up, right? This is a pathology, a need to hurt people, a need to control someone so much that if you say to them, you're going to sleep with that person, regardless of what that person's gender is or what that person looks like, he wants that control. Now, as you start to get into it, the first time that he hits you, you go, that's it, right? I'm out of here. I'm not putting up with this, right? There's no way. And then he says something along the lines of, I own you. I have this contract that you signed. I made a mistake. I love you. I'm sorry. I'm never going to hit you again. But you walk out this door, that contract's dead, and nobody in this industry will ever talk to you again. Talk to you again. He had power, right? And this is why when you talk about human trafficking, it doesn't mean people handcuffed, right? Walking through tunnels. It can mean that, right? It can. It can also mean someone that works in your office that you've got over a barrel, right? Let's say you caught the person. You got a person that works in your office and you caught her embezzling $1,000 from a fund that she wasn't supposed to. And instead of turning the person in, you use that leverage, right? That becomes trafficking, right? That becomes, when you use leverage to force someone to do something sexually, right? Leverage, enticing someone, offering this person a contract if they do this, all of those things become part of the trafficking. And I would go out on a limb, B lady, and say this. I don't want to embarrass myself or anybody else here, but she was also a young lady. And very often when we experiment with something, the first time it probably was unbelievable. It was probably the most exciting thing that had ever happened in her life. She was probably terrified. She was probably turned on. She was probably excited and all of those things. And then, after the experience had happened and she went, wow, that was something. Yeah, he went, we're doing it again in 3 days, right? This became something that for him was non-negotiable. And it was something that if she was going to continue the life that he had set up for her, it was non-negotiable for her too. And he would humiliate her further by doing things like forcing her to make the arrangements, to call and find out how long the guy's penis is before you hire him. Right? All of the embarrassment, all of the humiliation. And then on the ride home in your private jet when there's 25 people on it or whatever, put the video of her up on the big screen with two guys doing something to her at the same time. To let her know that you're in control of her. And the video that he put up allegedly, right, according to her, was a video that she watched him delete off of the phone. He just wanted her to know that I can go back and get that stuff. I can get anything I want. So what ends up happening, B-lady, is you find yourself in a position that this man can kill you in 100 ways without taking your life. And the control that he has over her at that point becomes total, right? If you believe that you walking away will get you killed, and I know people are going to send me emails and go, oh, she didn't believe she could walk away. She was trying to walk away that day in that hallway, wasn't she? Huh? She had enough that day. We don't know what happened. No one does. God, right? God, Diddy, and her. But something happened that day where she decided that she wanted to walk away. What she got for her effort was kicked, a knee to the face. She got punched. She got dragged by the hair. And he threw a vase at her that if it had hit her, it could have been a real serious problem. And as was pointed out by a very intelligent crew member of the lifeboat, he did that ass kicking while wearing a towel and not losing it. Right? Putting a beat down on that girl was not something that he was doing for the first time that day. He was a pro. Managed to not lose his towel in the excursion. Kind of ugly. Don't you think? The reason she stuck around is because Sean Combs is a master at being the person who has enough power to make your dreams come true or your worst nightmares a reality. And he had spent, allegedly, an entire career of about 3 decades proving to all parties involved that if I want to destroy you, I'm going to destroy you. And if I don't, maybe I'll just make you really rich and really famous. Maybe I'll give you everything you want. There are people out there that will say, well, look at where J-Lo was when she started kicking it with Diddy. And then look at where her career went. There was music, there was acting. She's got her own clothing line. There was a lot of stuff that kind of mirrored what was going on with Diddy and with Sean John and all that, right? And she's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. If you look at a distance, you go, well, he didn't seem to screw her life up much, huh? Well, maybe we don't know the whole story. Maybe J-Lo got out at the right time. Maybe J-Lo was a different kind of an operator. Maybe Diddy wasn't as far gone. Because I'm going to tell you something. The word on Diddy is that with all the drugs he was doing, and since we no longer care about the big red button demonetizing this puppy, on top of doing the Tucci, which is the pink cocaine, the guy was doing a lot of ecstasy. He likes psilocybin, so he was doing a lot of mushrooms. Apparently, nitrous oxide is a really big thing among all of these guys. They like breathing laughing gas, right? Hippie crack, whippets, right? And then an awful lot of opioids. This guy had a real serious problem, and his opioid of choice was the Percocet 30. Now, I don't know if he was giving his victims different drugs than he was doing, but his victims were testing for xylazine, which would lead me to believe that, believe it or not, with all the money on God's green earth, this guy was buying street pills. At least for his victims, because if they were coming from a pharmacy, they wouldn't be testing for xylazine. Those are most assuredly the fake M30s that have the fentanyl or the phytonitazines and nitazines cut with the xylazine, the stuff they're calling trank, right? So that's basically what Diddy was strung out on. And the longer you're on that, the worse decisions you make. You don't start off robbing banks your first year of being a heroin addict, right? You start off overdrafting your accounts and taking out more credit cards and doing stupid things like that and selling off stuff you own. Eventually, right? Your life spirals out of control and the next thing you know, you're robbing banks. Somewhere along the way, with serial killers, with criminals, with everything, you start to get sloppy, right? And you start to do, and I think at the end, that Sean Combs' drug habit and his need to control people got so out of control that it was like a serial killer. It was just a matter of time at the end before this thing exploded. Because I think he was basically doing it to everybody by the end, like a serial killer. Like he had spun so far out of control that there was nowhere he wouldn't do it. Again, we don't know how many of these lawsuits are just bullshit. There really could be a lot of them that are people just trying to get paid. But we believe a victim until there's a reason not to believe a victim, right? Arabian Bard, thank you so much. I appreciate that. More than you know. It's a hoot. Bet he had a hell of a kick off of that stuff. Alicia, I don't think he'd be off of it completely yet. I know it's going to sound crazy. But here's the thing. If he was really doing the trank stuff, he's still messed up. And 72 hours later, it's out of his system. But that's a really, really strong tranquilizer. And it's closest to the benzo family. He'd be really jacked up. His sleep patterns, apparently he's been on this stuff since right around when that tragedy was happening. He started taking pain meds allegedly then to deal with the guilt from the 9 people, and there's more than that. The deaths at the college, SUNY, the basketball, the AIDS benefit basketball tournament that turned into a bloodbath because they overbooked, allegedly. They overbooked the arena and one door remained locked. That was around the time that allegedly he started in with his pill habit. You know how long ago that was, folks? Huh? I was in high school. So he had a long habit. And I would imagine by the end, also, if you started doing dope, we'll keep it real. If you started doing dope in 1989, your dope supply was clean. Right? He was doing Percodans. He was doing Percocets. He was doing Oxycontins. He was doing stuff that you could get on the street that was actually made in a pharmacy. There was a very vibrant opioid market in that time. The supply was safe. You could buy tons of different things that would all go bang. These days, it doesn't matter what you buy, you're getting the same thing. Right? And it's all a much dirtier, much nastier opioid. So that's part of this equation, whether anybody wants to take it into account, for real. The drugs really, really changed. The street drugs changed. What Diddy was doing changed. And as the stuff out there got uglier, I think he did. And why wouldn't he? I mean, if what your habit is, you have to do opioids every single day. Well, now all of a sudden you have to do a lot of benzos on top of it, right? Because you'll taking Perk 30s every single day, you're gonna get a habit on the xylazine. He'll be sober at trial. Absolutely, he will be, unless he can, cop a strip of Suboxone or something, or he's got somebody in there that can get him a couple of pills. But I would imagine, with his paperwork, because of the unit, his unit's going to be away from everybody else. He's not going to be near like a normal general population. He's got the money. I mean, he's got the money. And he's a wheeler dealer. If Diddy wants to get dope in there, I bet he gets it. Honestly, it's not hard to get dope into a prison. If you've got money, it is not hard to get dope into a prison. And Diddy's not stupid. No one's going to bring it to him. He's going to get somebody in his unit to go meet his girl. And that girl is going to meet somebody from Diddy on the street who's going to give her a pile of stuff. Yeah, Diddy's probably getting high. The more I think about it, he's got money for days and he's in a unit. Yeah, he's probably getting high. I'm sure he's figured out a way to get dope in. It's not that hard. It really isn't. He's probably figured it out by now. Because I'm thinking about myself. If it were me and I was in there and I had Diddy's cash, it would have taken me 3 days. I promise. I would have watched and saw who went to visit, and I would have said to the guy when he came back, how'd you like to make 10 grand on your next visit? And I'll let you cape half the load. I don't think Diddy'd have a problem getting dope in. Timmy P, good to see ya. Thank you for popping up out of lurker mode. Monk, 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 monk. Don't they test folks in jail for drugs, especially someone like him? Yeah, they do. They do. But here's the thing. What do you do to him if he fails? Any idea? How do you punish a guy in jail who fails a drug test? Because, there's only so much you can do to him. And if you have like for me, when I went, before I got sober, do you know how many drug tests I failed? All of them, right? All of them. I was never very good at faking them. They're very, very difficult to fake in the feds. They really are. So I just failed them. I failed a bunch of them. And you lose good time and you go to the shoe. But depending on the yard you're on, like if you're at Victorville, there's so much dope at Victorville that if you get caught, you drop a hot piss test on a Friday, you'll be back in the unit on Tuesday. You'll spend Friday night in the shoe, Saturday night in the shoe, Sunday night. You'll see the disciplinary hearing officer on Monday, and you'll either be back to the yard Monday or Tuesday. And it got to a point, I'm not joking, where it was so bad that they would call 25 names at once. And you would go in to see the disciplinary hearing officer and they'd go, everybody pleading guilty, get on the right side of the room. And we'd get on the right side and there's not even a hearing. Like for real. They would just go on the paperwork and go, do you agree to these sanctions? You go, yeah, sign the paper and walk out. Never a day in the hole. You can't, there's nothing you can do. Everybody, if you shipped every person who fails a piss test, you'd be shipping the entire prison across the country like a spider web. At $30,000 of transport, you'd be shipping a lot of people around the country because they're fighting boredom, people, right? They're fighting boredom and depression. What do you think? They've been self-medicating on the street their entire life. Now you got them somewhere where they're 10 times more depressed than they ever were on the street. They're going to do dope. And yeah, they do test, but they can only test you about once a month. So let's say they test him, And if they tested him the day he went to court and he tested dirty, they're still going to show up in court. I mean, they could say to the judge, Your Honor, failed the drug test today. But they're not going to tell the jury probably, honestly. Or the judge would have to decide whether or not they could tell the jury. Is that everything always has to be weighed against prejudicial versus probative or however that goes. Look, I'm no lawyer, folks. I'm not. I'm a retired criminal. Sounds like jail is not a solution then. Well, look, I mean, here's the thing. There is a jail inside jail. That's the shoe, right? So when you get busted for something, they come in the unit and put handcuffs on you, which is kind of silly if you think about it. But they put handcuffs on you and they walk you out of the unit in handcuffs. And then the cop who's working the unit says a 13-letter word that starts with M and ends with R, usually yells it really loud, because his job is now to take a bucket and go up to the cell and take all of my property and pack it up and put it in a bag, because they can't leave all my stuff in there. My cellmate might steal it. Or they also want to know, what do I got in there? Am I sitting on drugs? Have I got weapons? What do I got in my cell? Have I got an ERA? Have I got a binky? A syringe? They're in there looking for stuff and packing it out. And then you sit in the hole for a couple of days until you see a disciplinary hearing officer. But the hole is jail for prison. That's where you go when you get in trouble inside. But there's no solution to it. Now, do it enough. Get him angry enough, and they would send you to the special management unit, which is where I ended up, and that's hell. Like, you probably have seen the clips of film of the stuff that they're showing you in South America. At the SMU, they're really not treating you a whole lot different in America at the special management unit than they are at those things that you saw in South America. I'm not joking. The only difference is that, like, when you see them walking and they push their heads down, they do the same thing at the SMU. Except they take your hands cuffed behind your back and they lift them up as high as they can, right? So you get a guy whose hands are cuffed and there's no chain, by the way. It's a solid handcuff. And they grab that and they push it up as high as they can. So your hand is forced down, and that's how they walk you everywhere you go. But it's not even a disrespectful thing. It's just, this is a lockdown unit. This is how we move you. For the most part, everybody, you just kind of get used to everything that happens to you, I guess. Do you remember the pain medication Darvocet? Absolutely I do. Darvon and its cousin Darvocet. One of the fascinating drugs, because it is in its liquid form, right? My memory of Darvocet, which is really odd, was and Darvon, that it actually hit you better intermuscular than it did in the vein, which is a very odd thing in the pain specialty arena. That stuff was almost worthless in the vein, but it was absolutely incredible if they did it intramuscular. Really a weird pain medication, but I do remember it. Word is, guards at this facility don't make a lot of dough. A lot of them look the other way, don't make enough to care. Well, listen, the truth be known, everywhere that there is somebody guarding somebody, they're not making enough money. Are you kidding? They're doing the same sentence I'm doing. They got to show up there every single friggin' day. They're smelling the same smells. They're listening to the same people screaming the same obscenities. Then they have to go home, right? And bend down on one knee and hug their son or daughter as they come through the door from that pit. Those guys don't get paid enough money. Neither do the gals, especially the gals. To work at a men's prison, there's not enough money on earth to pay a woman to do that. There isn't. I've always said they don't make enough money. And my friend Casper used to say, I would treat him a lot worse. If you handed the nightstick to me, I'd probably treat him a lot worse than they're treating us. And I don't know. Honestly, I don't know about all of that. But I do know this. I do know that the vast majority of them work really, really hard in really, really tough conditions. And I don't know, it's a crap job. They get treated like the bastard stepchild of the law enforcement community. If they say that you ever see them on cops or anything, anytime somebody says that they work, that they guard prisoners, they treat them like a prisoner. They don't treat them like a cop. It's kind of a bad situation all the way around. And as I've mentioned, while I was at Victorville, sitting in the shoe waiting to get shipped, we had 2 cops kill themselves at Victorville, suicides, in the parking lot, where a cop came in and took his service weapon, blew the top of his head off. And then, like, within a month, it was like 2 weeks later or something, another cop came in and did it. And in both cases, it was somebody that was sitting there and couldn't face walking through that door to do another shift. I mean, literally. committed suicide in the parking lot. Now that we're saying that word, because I'm never able to say it, when we talk about Epstein not killing himself, not committing suicide, suicide watch has nothing in the room. Suicide watch has a man that sits on the outside of a door. It's not a metal door, right? It's a glass door. You're on observation. It's called an observation cell. When they showed the cell that Epstein died in, it was just a shoe cell. He died in the shoe, in the segregated housing unit. He didn't die on suicide watch. He didn't die on observation. If he had been in an observation cell, there would have been one bed in the middle of the cell. There wouldn't have been a bunk. And there would have been a camera on the ceiling, which they claimed the camera was out. There never would have been a camera in that room. Never. You wouldn't put a camera in a room that had a bunk bed. First of all, the guy would stand on top of the bunk and very easily mess with the camera. Okay? Logical? Okay, well, on a suicide cell, there is no bunk. There's just a flat floor. There's a toilet and a flat floor. And they give you a little mat this big that you can't roll up to try to kill yourself with in any way. And then you have somebody that is a suicide buddy, right? What they call my brother's keeper. And the brother's keeper works in 4-hour shifts. Every 4 hours, an inmate replaces another inmate. You sit there for 4 hours, and your job is to either sit there and just listen, right? Or if the person wants to be silent, your goal is to try to get him to engage a little bit. Anything, try to get him to talk, try to get him to come out of their shell. But you're never, ever alone. There's never a moment on observation where you're alone. And every 15 minutes, right, a cop is going to come by and check on the inmate to make sure the inmate and the guy on the other side of the glass are fine. When I heard the Epstein thing, everybody just went, he died on suicide watch and there's no witnesses? Wow. Ain't that something? He died in the shoe, right? They talked about how his cellmate had just left. A cellmate? What the hell is he doing with a cellmate? This is the guy you're most worried about on earth, right? As far as every inmate in the BOP, this is the number one guy you got to protect, and you gave him a cellmate? That seems odd to me. Honestly, that seems really odd to me. I mean, I guess they could have put him in with a child molester or something but anybody else you put in was probably going to want to buck on the guy in the first place. Just a very, very, the whole thing the whole thing stunk. That's what it did. My trip was fantastic, KP and AZ. My trip was good. I got an awful lot done. New York fired more than 2,000 prison guards Monday for failing to return to work after a week-long wildcat strike. Well, I'm glad. I'll be really honest with you. Right? The last thing that I did with on the show I was doing after the bars, I no longer do work with that program. But one of the last stories that we covered together over there was a man that got beat to death by the guards in New York, who apparently just did it for shits and giggles. Right? There's no reason for anything they did. They just felt like beating that man to death. I believe his name was Brooks. It's maybe they need 2,000 new ones. And maybe we need a better plan. Right? Maybe we need a better plan. Maybe we need to sit down as a country and say, $37,000 a year to keep somebody in a prison. Are we getting our money's worth? For real. If these people come in and 8 out of 10 of them come out worse than they went in, and we're pissing 37,000 or 34,000 or whatever they're saying it is down the toilet every year on every one of these people. For real. And first of all, 37 grand? Do you realize where you could live for 37 grand a year? I mean, I don't know what they're doing with the money. They feed you $1.60 worth of shit and they don't give you a pillow. Where the hell does all that money go? You know where it goes, honestly? It goes into math because a guy like me that fails a drug test or gets in a fist fight has to get on an airplane and fly halfway across the country. And that transportation is more than 30 grand. And every time one of those happens, that gets put into the equation and all that math starts to add up. And that's how you get those astronomical numbers of how much it costs per inmate to house somebody. But I've said this before, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, but prison reinforces every single bad thing that we learned as criminals. You walk through the front door, you don't know anything about prison. Everybody is forced to wear khakis. In the feds, you wear khakis. It looks like Maverick on Top Gun when he wasn't wearing his whites. They always wear those khaki blouse and the pants that the Air Force wears. That's what we wear when we're not when we're just casual in the feds. That's your uniform. But when you walk in the unit, you see guys wearing sweatpants, right? And they got on high top Nikes. They're not wearing boots. And these guys are just decked out, right? They got watches on. They're wearing hats. They don't look like everybody else. And you go, what's the deal with that cat? What's he do? He sells drugs. And you go, oh, okay. Then you see another dude who seems like he doesn't go to the chow hall. He's cooking his own food. You go, what's his deal? He's a bookie. He's taking bets. It takes you about 5 days to realize that the only people that aren't doing really hard time in that unit are breaking the law still. The guys that came in and said, I'm going to get a job. I'm going to do exactly what you tell me to do, right? I'm going to go and try to get my GED if you don't have it, or a college degree if you don't have it, or whatever. And I'm going to go get a job working in the kitchen. They say, great. You work 40 hours a week in the kitchen, and at the end of the first month, you make $19.61. And the guy that's selling the K2 or the dope back in the unit, he made $9,000 while you were making that $19 check, right? And he's playing cards, watching television, and having a good time. And you're busting your ass, washing dishes in a room that's 125, 135 degrees, and you're soaking wet, right? They teach you that if you play by the rules, you're gonna fail. You're not gonna be successful. It's a hell of a thing to teach a guy in prison, isn't it? So it seems really obvious, like the kind of obvious that's so obvious that it just makes you go, Maybe reward people. Make it a reward system. Make sure that the guy in there that looks like he's doing better time than everybody else looks that way because he's doing everything right. Maybe the guys that are slinging dope, maybe have them in shoe, right? Maybe have them out of there. Maybe give them a chance. Because honest to God, if you had walked into Victorville when I was there and you had said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take Unit 4, right? Or Unit E, Echo lower, right? E lower. We're going to take E lower and we're going to make that the dope unit. So if you don't want to be near dope, right, in any way, there won't be any dealers in A block. There won't be any dealers in B. All of the dope and all of the dealers are going to be in E block. I would have gone to E block. So would a lot of other inmates. But if you had given me that choice at the end of my sentence, I would have gone to Unit A. Give them a choice. Just say, we're going to have a unit that nobody in this unit's going to do any dope. You guys have to do a drug test once a week. This unit's going to be for people that actually want to turn their life around. You're expected to do all of these things. You miss one of them, you're gone. Boom. Gone. You're going to have to maintain a job. You're going to have to do all these things. At the end of 12 months, you move to a new unit. That unit has a television set in its cell. You get a completely different outfit, different wardrobe. You don't have to wear what everybody else wears anymore. You can pick from about 5 different things that you can now own. Now you have the ability to start to, and you give them a little bit of, they earn, right? They earn a little bit of respect. They get treated like a citizen because they act like a citizen. It's way too simple. It'll never work. Right? You need somebody with a lot of initials after their name to tell you why that works. I saw a post this morning, and I'm not sure who posted it, but it was about the rat utopia, the rat city. It was an experiment that was done a long time ago, but I haven't talked about it on the boat in a long time, and I thought this would be it's one of my favorite subjects ever, and I always have to do that kid talk, that fake talk where I don't say heroin or cocaine or any of those things, right? And I'm not doing that, so this is going to be a lot more fun. We all remember the ads from the 1980s, and you got a rat in a cage, right? Despite all my rage. Get it out of your system. And still just a rat in a cage. All right, did we get it? All right, good. And they had a water bottle, a feeder bar, right? That the animal could go up and get water, and right next to it had water with blow in it, cocaine. And it would go and do the cocaine, and it would run around in circles, and it makes your heart race, it speeds up your heart. It's a upper. It would do a little bit more, it would run around in circles, and more often than not, it would continue to do that until it starved to death or it died of exploding its heart. And it certainly made a point, when they were showing these ads to us in the 1980s, and you saw the little feet doing the little kiver as the last of the life was rushing out of this mouse. And then a guy had a theory and said, well, for the love of God, it's in a prison cell, and you gave it water and cocaine. It chose cocaine. There's a shocker. So it built like a rat park, a rat utopia. And in there was every cool thing you could ever want to do if you were a rat. Include a ton of sex, if you wanted to have sex with, with female rats or male rats, whatever you were into. It was all there. And there were cool colors, and there were little places where they could rip up cardboard because they were super into that. They could shred cardboard. There was a little water kind of a thing that they could go and sort of play in this sort of water feature. It had everything. It had a little maze. It had balls to play with. And a funny thing happened. The rats no longer really wanted to go after the coke. That's not to say that none of them ever did, but none of them fixated on it. None of them became what you would associate with any kind of dependency. In fact, about 8 out of 10 of them in the real study don't touch it at all. About 80% were just like, yeah, you know what? Now that I'm not locked up in a cell, maybe I don't want that stuff. And it makes you ask the question, do you have a drug problem, right? Or do you have a park problem? Do you have a chemical problem? Or is the cage that you're living in got nothing in it but water and cocaine? Or water and heroin? Or water and beer? Have you built yourself a world where there's nothing to find joy in other than the feeder bar full of dope? Because I've lived there, man. I swear to God, I spent a lot of years there. You need to build a better park. And you know what the really cool thing is? You don't need any money for that. You don't. I promise. Change your environment. You know how I know this? Huh? Because I lived in a fucking box for 13 years. A cage. A cage, I promise you that 9 out of 10 of you listening to me have a bigger walk-in closet in your master bedroom of your house than where I spent those 13 years. But it's amazing when that's all you got, how you can make that different. You know what I did? I filled it with things that could get me out of that box. Right? And it's going to sound hokey as hell, but you put 125 books in that room, and I can forget those 4 walls are there. For real. Right? You start reading a fantastic book. And the last time around, I didn't do a whole lot of nonfiction, but I would do like 1 a week. And it was more like a reward kind of thing. But like, the Count of Monte Cristo, you're reading about a dude in a cell. Right? While in a cell. And it's amazing how that man's suffering will remove you out of your own. That rat had nothing to concentrate on in life that was positive. I met a guy a couple of days ago who has had more loss in the last 6 months than anybody I've ever met has had lifetime. Nobody in this man's family survived the last 6 months. He's on a really bad run. And he started the conversation with, Tommy, I don't have anybody left. There is no family. I am an orphan. There's nobody. I don't have a family. And this man's never seen The Lifeboat. I was asked to meet this person in person, which is always an odd thing for me these days. But I said, if you'd ever watched my channel, you would know that one of the things that I really harp on is that you can pick your family. As much as people say that you can't, you absolutely can. And I said to the man, I said, the proof is that I'm here, right? You're not paying me anything to be here. I didn't show up here. The only reason that I'm here is because someone who loves you so much begged me to come and talk to you. You obviously at least have a sister, right? Maybe you don't know it, but you've got a sister, because this one busted my balls until I did this. This isn't necessarily the headspace that I was in a couple of days ago, honestly. Excited as hell about what's going on in my life, but this aspect, meeting people, right, doing this, hasn't been it's been something I'd like to focus a little less on. But it was rewarding as hell to go out and talk to somebody in the position that this person was in. And to actually see that light bulb go on where he went, holy crap. Like, this dude does this on YouTube, but he's here because somebody that's been praying for me for so long now has finally reached out to this dude and said, hey, will you go talk to this person? If you're wondering why I told that story, because in a really weird way, that person is part of my rat park. Do you understand? I don't want a bunch of rats to have sex with. But a little bit of connection and the feeling that, you know what? I've helped a lot of people doing what we do here. And I said we, because we have. The person that I went and met with, like I said, has never seen The Lifeboat, never seen one episode of it. But I know if this cat had been watching the boat for the last year, 90% of the questions that he asked me would have been answered by people in the chat. Honestly. He was talking about self-deleting. Oh, what am I doing? He's talking about killing himself. He's talking about committing suicide. It's one of the reasons that I had reached out to him. No pressure on that one, right? And I'm not a doctor. In fact, ask the locals. I'm a con man. Right? No pressure. You can choose your family. And you can choose your park. If you're sitting and looking at a feeder bar, and that feeder bar can be a phone, it can be a line, it can be a bong, it can be whatever the hell you want, right? But if there's something in your life that is that you're continuing to hit instead of doing anything else, maybe take a deep breath and reevaluate. Wanda Collins says, but Busby hired the New York lawyers in the first week the case started. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. He had to, right? And this is standard operating procedure, by the way, Wanda. Everybody does this, right? Everybody does this. Kitty litter. That was my electric kitty litter. I don't know what the hell that sound was. Everybody does this. If you're going to take a case in another, like when you see the big firms on TV, call Morgan & Morgan, right? You know that Morgan & Morgan doesn't, there aren't 5,000 Morgan & Morgan offices. They're one big name, right? And they have all of these other lawyers who all work in association with them. These kind of, handshaking and all those things. Great to have you here, Wanda Collins. I'm glad that you're here. All of that kind of stuff that goes on, yeah, it happens every day. There are a lot of people making a lot of hay about it because probably it's going to get them some views. On the bright side, people, I'm not going to clickbait you in with anything anymore either. If I put something up, we're probably really going to be talking about it. I care a whole lot less about the views as well. What are we talking about? Let's see here. Are we talking about crack? Which drug are we talking about that you can get 27 years ago? Nowadays, it has fentanyl. It's not the same, I'm sure. Hold on. Couldn't find what the drug is. Sorry, I was looking for it. I was trying to figure out which drug you were talking about. None of the drugs that are out today are what they used to be. The drug supply, and someone's going to send me an email tonight and say, I get fish scale cocaine in Boston. Fantastic. Drugs in Boston last year killed 3 friends of mine. Be really careful what you snort, what you put in the needle. I lost 3 Bostonian friends last year alone. There's an awful lot of really dirty dope on the street. You guys need to be very, very careful. The number 1 cause of death in the United States of America is, and probably will be for a hot minute, drug overdose. We're getting better though. Fish scale, Kristen Melinda. is an expression that was used back in the day to describe cocaine. If you've ever seen a small amount of oil that gets in a puddle and you see an oil slick and you can see the different colors of the rainbow in the oil slick, if you can imagine a rock, a white rock, and when it gets broken, when you look on the side, it looks like the scales of a fish, how you see the different colors in it, except depending on what the cocaine was made with, if it was you have to use a chemical to soak the leaves in it, right? To get the reaction to remove all of the acid out of the blow, so that you can take that oil and turn it into cocaine. And they either use gasoline or they use kerosene or they use diesel fuel, and depending on which one you use, it slightly colors the blow. And the stuff that was really, really popular back in the 80s was like a yellowish hue to it. Very strong scent. It was made with diesel, and it was the stuff that used to have the El Jefe stamp in it. It would have the picture of Pablo Escobar's face like pressed right into the brick, and they used to call it fish scale. That's what they called it back in the day, but it hasn't been around for someone. Again, I'll get something today that says I get it every day. It kind of disappeared for logical reasons. It takes a crap load. You would not believe how much acreage that you've got to grow of coca leaves and then process that stuff to make cocaine. So now what they're doing is they're bringing in stuff from China because it's way cheaper to buy a fake than it is to have farmers who, and most of the farmers who grow that stuff, they turn it into the buska, the base, they turn it into cocaine base, and then they take that base in backpacks, 50, 100 pounds at a whack, to processing centers who turn it into the final product, but they don't make dick. It's a really weird economy too, because so much of their country depends on those people growing an illegal crop. It's a very, very, it's a weird crop, weird country. Odd stuff to Brazil, everything in South America. Cocaine makes the narco economy of South America is. And I'm not making light of it, but it's really fascinating. Who is the female celebrity B? We haven't heard that. Wanda, we have not. My theory on this is going to stick with this. My theory is going to stick with this. The whole world yelled it was J-Lo. This is just my theory. But the whole world started yelling J-Lo. It lined up with when we thought that the award ceremony might have been, right? If you're J-Lo, your publicist doesn't put out a statement that says, wasn't us. My client has never seen somebody raped, and if she had, she would have reported it to the police that very day. Why do you not issue that statement? Doesn't make any sense, does it? So that's my theory. I'm sticking with that one. I'm sorry, I am. And my theory is also that since we know, right? Since we know Jay-Z's got named because he didn't pay, doesn't that mean that celebrity B did pay? I mean, isn't that logic? Isn't that basic logic? And it's the kind of logic that leads somebody to say, okay, we'll dismiss it with prejudice and I'll trust that you're going to pay me, because they already probably got paid. Maybe not as much, but there was probably a couple of $1 million at least that exchanged hands. Let's say celebrity B gave up $5 million. And if it was J-Lo, allegedly, right, she's worth $400 million. What if she gave up 20? The lawyers take 10. Client gets 10. Right? Maybe she says, okay, yeah, well, I'll dismiss the thing. And then you said that, he's going to help, he's going to write a check or something afterwards, and however that ends up, whatever, right? Tara Jackson says, I think it's going to be Beyonce. Might just be, but Beyonce, I feel actually what they worship. Yeah, Beyonce's a sicko. I don't think there's any doubt about that. How long do I think the Diddy trial will go on? 2 weeks? Oh no. Try 2 months. My guess is that we're probably going to be looking at 12 to 16 weeks. That would be my guess. Now, what do I know? Right? But that's my guess. Tara Jackson, I think you might be right. There's some sick people. They're certainly into iconography, right? They're into some strange imagery. If they're not into the house was in New Jersey. Thank you, Wanda. I think it's going to be Beyonce, maybe just maybe but Beyonce, I feel actually they worship that kind of, yeah, they're into some very odd stuff. I think that they're into to that kind of, they're certainly into some weird shit. And if they're not, they want us to think they're, because they put the images up on everything, and they're, forever like all of the association with Aleister Crowley and the fascination with all of Crowley stuff. I mean, even if you're just putting that on to get people to talk about it, well, then don't get pissed when they talk about it, right? There's a lot of people in rock and roll who do things because it's going to be sensational, right? Did Ozzy bite the head off of a bat, right? I mean, so many of the things that just are part of the look at what Ye is doing. You think Kanye West really believes all of this garbage? Huh? I mean, this is maybe he does. Maybe he's this sick. But it's really funny how all of these episodes he has are right around the time he's releasing albums. It seems a little planned to me. No, you're absolutely right. And you make a great point. You really, I remember that, Wanda Collins. Well, she said Tisa from Tisa Tells found the house in New Jersey. I remember that. Tommy, remember, did you or anyone think Casey Anthony would be found innocent on all major counts? Anything can happen. I'll tell you what, at the beginning of the trial, I did not. By halfway through the trial, I thought she was going to beat it. The prosecution butchered that. Absolutely butchered that. Now, we are also talking about an apple versus an orange, and I'll tell you why. And I'm not just because in one case we had this much evidence compared to what we have in this case, which is just so much evidence. And in this other case, we had this mystery. And on this side, we have thousands of people, right, who are screaming, I've been abused, right? Yeah, Casey Anthony was about as bad a human being as, and the theories that have come, her dad did this or any of the other things, you know what? They're theories. They're all theories. But here's what I know, right? Just real quick before we wrap it up, because I could do 4 days on Casey Anthony. Casey Anthony was out grinding her body against people while her daughter was allegedly out lost. Now, if you're a parent, there's nobody here that hasn't turned around in a grocery store and your kid isn't there. And there's that minute where you go, oh my God, where's my kid? Okay. That's what she was doing during that, oh my God, where's my kid moments. She was getting drunk, eating ecstasy, and grinding up on other women on stage while people poured water over her shirt for a wet t-shirt competition. So no matter what was going on with dad and with everything else, she was filthy deep into everything and needed really, really needed justice that was not served. Casey Anthony, there was no justice there whatsoever. And there's nothing worse than that. Nothing worse. Kanye is a schizophrenic and easily manipulated by his handlers. That includes controlling his medication. I think they take him on and off it for the dramas, etc. You could be right, Valerie. Like maybe you think his handlers just go, okay, we got an album coming out. Let's cut his dose back, put him on placebos, and let him start yelling Jew a lot. I mean, because that's kind of how it happens, isn't it? He gets kind of normal, does a little half-ass apology or whatever, and then right around the time we start getting around an album, he starts yelling about Hitler and Jews and swastikas and all of the other garbage. That's just a moron. I believe they're messing with Kanye, and I've always left him hard dose on excuse of puff. Yeah, well, look, Tara, it's hard to not look at those people and say this is the Kardashian clan. I mean, can you imagine hiring a firm to test market what color your next boyfriend or girlfriend should be for everybody in the family to make sure that you maximize your shot at getting views? By the way, if you wanted to send me an opinion on who my next girlfriend should be, you can send it to Kanye West. He can take a look at that. But for real, They literally wanted to get the opinions of people to find out what was going to sell, what was going to play better to the masses. The Kardashians dating white, black, or maybe Latina. What the actual F is going on in your life where that's something that you need to research like that? You're a kind of evil that doesn't come along very often. Thank God it doesn't come along very often. Yeah. I will ask one favor before we end tonight, right? As I was telling you guys the other day, you don't have to feel, don't ever feel like you got to throw up a super chat or do any of that stuff anymore. We're not really stressed out about any of that. And I'm going to say coke, heroin, rape. I'm going to say whatever I want. I'm going to talk like a human being, right? For real. So, and we're going to have a pretty good time doing it. It's going to hurt my numbers a little. I don't care. I'm playing to you guys now, right? I'm talking to the audience that has stuck with me thus far. Love squirrel. And I certainly do appreciate it, by the way. It's every last one of you. I really do. I appreciate it. But if you could do me a favor, I'll tell you right now, the content that I watch on YouTube comes from about 2 or 3 content creators. Sometimes there's a couple of others that I will occasionally check in on. But if it's not talking about particular things that I am researching or I am interested in, I don't look at it. So to those who will send me an email and say, I would like your opinion on what this person is doing. I don't know what this person is doing. I don't, and I don't want to. I know after I've answered the 4th one of those in a day, I may sound like I have an attitude problem, and it's the last thing in the world that I want to do. But I just want you guys to know that truthfully and honestly, I have had some really strange requests from some of you. And there are some people that, because of just how unbelievable the chemistry has been between me and somebody on camera, there are people that have really reached out and have begged me to, for some kind of reconciliation, for the hope of friendship or something. And God bless you, all of you, because it does sound so much like what I've been preaching here for a really long time, and moving towards love and all of that. What I will say though is that there are times on planet Earth where you have to realize that there are things that just are there are things that need to remain unsaid. Is what it is, right? There are times that you don't get the last word. In fact, there are times you don't get a word, period. And I think there might be a lesson in that. I'm not exactly sure what it is yet. I'm really not. But I'm not going to be running to any place to save anybody ever again. And I don't, let me rephrase that. I most assuredly will end up doing that someday again, because I'm an ass. But I'm not going to be running back to save anybody that I've saved before. Right? So people who are hopeless romantics and all of that, I get that. I really do. And if the two of us could have stayed live 24 hours a day, we probably could have had it better than anybody in history. But we were really only fantastic at 2 times, right? And you can't be in front of the camera all the time. You can't. So if you could keep those kind of correspondence, if you want me to pray for somebody, if you've got, if it's about sobriety, if it's about things like that, we've moved forward. And if the emails are about things that don't pertain to that, if there are things that want opinions or clarifications or things that, if I won't talk about it on a live, I'm not going to answer it in a comment. I mean, in an email, right? I really would like to close the chapter. You hear me? And I know I'll get crap for saying that the way that I said it, but I don't have another choice on this one. This is just how it works. It is what it is. And we were, and you know what? I hope a day comes where someday I could go back and watch a couple of those old ones. I don't know that that day will ever come, but maybe someday. For the time being, people, I want to keep doing what we're doing. So talk to me about the things that we talk about, right? Yeah, no, revisiting the past is no good. Blue Bayou says, women are dangerous. I'm one of them. I know, run. Yeah. Thank you, Jane Aldrich. We will consider that closed. And I thank all of you. Between now, the next time I see you, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to do a little harm reduction. Oh, and I have one other thing that I have to say. I've had a couple of other people reach out to me because they have some questions on the THCA flower and things of that nature. I am going to recommend some places that you can go in the future to look at some stuff about that. I'm not going to be covering it the same anymore. And the reason is this, just by way of full disclosure. I have very seriously considered investing in that industry. It would be literally investing, as in like you would with paper. In other words, I won't be buying crops. But I don't feel comfortable coming on here and talking about something that I'm investing in. Right? I'm not going to try to create a market for my investment. That to me actually does sound like a con. When I brought it up here the first time, I knew very little about it, and I was very interested to find out about it. I know a lot more about it now, and if I were to go forward talking about it on here, whether you want to believe this or not, that would, I think ethically that might be a problem for me. So it's not something I will be discussing here in the future. All right? But there is some really fantastic information out there, and I'm going to find where it is and recommend that you can go and check it out. But God forbid, I do a show on it 2 years from now, someone will say, do you know he owns a bunch of stock in a, not even going down that road. So it'll be a subject that I will not be talking about in the future in the way that I have been in the past. I'll answer questions or whatever, but I don't want to look like I'm advocating for a product that I own an investment of some kind in. It's just bad form. Whether you believe it or not, it is. It's just bad form. Hey, Cricket, good to see you. Glad that you're here. So between now, folks, and the next time I see you, reduce a little harm, would you? Trying my first THCA gummy for sleep tonight. I'll share my results. You're going to find, Lisa Ayers, that it is the exact same thing. It just isn't any different. It's literally the exact same thing. Weird, but how it works out. All right, people. I dig y'all. I really do. So we'll see you on the next one. It's a lot more fun when we can just talk, isn't it? Huh? Pulling all those punches. You know how tired I am of saying grape? It's just stupid that we can't have a friggin' conversation and say the word cocaine or they're just going to demonetize it. Well, I'll tell you what. Keep it. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.